Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to Soul Stories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to join our family. Stay with us, because a new love story is about to begin. The dust rose in lazy spirals behind Marcus Wheeler's pickup truck as he navigated the familiar dirt road leading back to his ranch. The afternoon sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, and the mountains in the distance stood as silent witnesses to another day ending on the Wheeler property. Marcus was 42 years old, with hands roughened by decades of honest work and eyes that had seen too much loneliness. His wife, Catherine, had passed away 4 years ago, leaving him with 600 acres of land, a herd of cattle, and a silence so profound that sometimes he forgot the sound of his own voice. He pulled up to his weathered farmhouse, the white paint peeling in places, the porch swing creaking in the evening breeze as if greeting an old friend. This had been his family's land for 3 generations, and he'd promised himself he would never abandon it, no matter how empty it felt. His border collie, Sage, bounded toward the truck, tail wagging furiously. At least someone was always happy to see him. "Hey there, girl," Marcus said, his voice rusty from disuse. He scratched behind the dog's ears and looked up at the house that had once been filled with laughter, and now echoed only with memories. The doctor's visit that morning had been routine, or so he'd thought. Dr. Patterson, who had known Marcus since he was a boy running through these same fields, had listened to his heart, checked his blood pressure, and then sat down with that look physicians get when they're about to deliver news that goes beyond physical ailments. "Marcus, your body is fine for a man your age," Dr. Patterson had said, removing his glasses and rubbing his eyes. "But I'm worried about you. When's the last time you had a real conversation with someone? When's the last time you laughed?" Marcus had shrugged, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Loneliness is a killer, son. It's as dangerous as smoking or obesity. Your heart's still beating, but are you really living?" Those words echoed in Marcus's mind as he climbed the porch steps. The doctor had given him a peculiar prescription that day, not written on paper, but spoken with genuine concern. He'd told Marcus about a young widow who had recently moved to town with her 8-year-old daughter. She needed work, and more importantly, she needed a fresh start. "Her name is Elena Summers," Dr. Patterson had said. "She lost her husband in a car accident 2 years ago. She's looking for any kind of honest work. Maybe you could use some help around the ranch. Consider it a prescription for both of you." Marcus had dismissed the idea at first. He'd managed alone for 4 years. He didn't need anyone's help, and he certainly didn't need the complication of strangers in his carefully constructed solitude. But as he sat on the porch that evening, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains, he felt the weight of emptiness pressing down on him. The house was too quiet, the days were too long, and the nights were endless stretches of staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was left. The next morning, Marcus found himself driving into town. He told himself it was for supplies, but somehow his truck ended up parked outside the small apartment building where Dr. Patterson had mentioned Elena was staying. He sat there for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, arguing with himself. Finally, with a grunt of frustration, he climbed out and made his way to apartment 4B. The woman who answered the door had dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and tired eyes that held both wariness and hope. She was perhaps 35, with the kind of quiet beauty that came from strength rather than artifice. "Can I help you?" she asked, one hand on the doorframe. "I'm Marcus Wheeler. I own a ranch about 15 miles outside town." He cleared his throat, feeling awkward and out of practice with human interaction. "Dr. Patterson mentioned you might be looking for work." Elena's expression shifted, a flicker of interest breaking through her caution. "I am. What kind of work? I need someone to help around the house. Cooking, cleaning, maybe some bookkeeping. The ranch has gotten away from me a bit." He paused, then added, "The pay is fair, and if you need housing, there's a cottage on the property that's been sitting empty." A small face appeared from behind Elena's legs. A little girl with her mother's dark hair and curious brown eyes peered up at Marcus. "Mama, who's this?" the child asked. "This is Mr. Wheeler, Sophie. He might have a job for me." Elena looked back at Marcus. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Here's my number." He handed her a card he'd hastily written before leaving his truck. "The offer stands whenever you're ready." 3 days later, Elena called. 1 week after that, she and Sophie moved into the small cottage on the Wheeler property. The first few weeks were awkward. Marcus had grown so accustomed to silence that the sounds of another person moving through his house felt almost intrusive. Elena was quiet and efficient, arriving each morning at 7, preparing breakfast, cleaning, organizing, and leaving in the evening to spend time with her daughter. She worked hard, never complaining, never asking questions about the photographs of Catherine that still hung on every wall or the wedding ring Marcus still wore on his finger. It was Sophie who first broke through Marcus's carefully constructed walls. The little girl had no understanding of adult grief or the boundaries that lonely people build around themselves. She saw the horses in the pasture and begged to leave. RN to ride. She found Sage and made the old dog her constant companion. She asked questions incessantly about the cattle, about the mountains, about why the sky turned pink at sunset. "Mr. Wheeler, do you have any kids?" Sophie asked one afternoon, watching him repair a fence post. "No," Marcus replied, the word carrying years of disappointment. He and Catherine had tried, but it had never happened for them. "That's sad," Sophie said with the directness only children possess. "You'd be a good dad. You're patient like a dad should be." Marcus had to turn away, pretending to examine the fence, until the burning in his eyes subsided. Elena noticed the change in him before he noticed it himself. She saw how he began to linger over breakfast, asking about her plans for the day. She watched him teach Sophie how to saddle a horse, his gruff exterior softening as the little girl's face lit up with excitement. She heard him laugh for the first time when Sage stole a biscuit right off his plate. "You were different," she told him one evening, finding him on the porch as had become their habit. Sophie was already asleep in the cottage, and Elena had taken to spending an hour with Marcus before retiring for the night. "When I first met you, you looked like a man who had forgotten how to live." Marcus stared out at the darkening sky. "Maybe I had. This ranch, it was everything to Catherine and me. When she died, it felt like the land itself was grieving. I couldn't see past that." "I understand," Elena said softly. "After Daniel died, I felt like a ghost walking through my own life. Everything reminded me of him. I had to leave our town just to breathe again." "Does it get easier?" Marcus asked, a question he'd never voiced to anyone. "Different," Elena answered honestly. "Not easier exactly, but different. The sharp edges of grief eventually smooth over. The memories become something you can hold without bleeding." They sat in comfortable silence, two wounded souls finding unexpected solace in each other's company. As months passed, the ranch transformed. Elena planted flowers around the farmhouse, bringing color to the neglected garden. Sophie's laughter echoed across the fields, chasing away the ghosts of silence. Marcus found himself waking with purpose, looking forward to breakfast conversations and evening porch talks. He didn't realize he was falling in love until it was already too late to stop it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. Elena was in the kitchen, flour dusting her cheeks as she rolled out dough for a pie. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching the gray strands in her dark hair, and she was humming softly, a tune Marcus didn't recognize, but found himself wanting to hear forever. She looked up and caught him watching her. Instead of looking away, he held her gaze. "Marcus," she said, something uncertain but hopeful in her voice. "I was thinking," he said, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years, "that maybe why and Sophie shouldn't go back to the cottage tonight. It's supposed to storm. You could stay in the guest room." It was a flimsy excuse, and they both knew it. But Elena nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. That night, after Sophie was tucked into the guest room bed, Marcus and Elena sat by the fireplace, listening to rain hammer against the windows. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Marcus admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought that part of me died with Catherine." Elena reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, alive, a connection to the present that pulled him away from the past. "I've been scared," she confessed. "Scared that caring for someone again means opening myself up to losing them. But these past months with you, watching you with Sophie, seeing the man you are beneath all that loneliness, I realized something." "What's that?" "That not loving someone doesn't protect you from pain. It just guarantees you'll face that pain alone." Marcus turned to face her fully. In the firelight, she looked like a dream he hadn't dared to dream. "Dr. Patterson told me I needed a prescription for my loneliness," he said. "He told me to hire you, to let someone into my life again." Elena laughed softly. "He told me the same thing. He said there was a rancher who needed saving as much as I did." "That old meddler," Marcus said. But there was no anger in his voice, only gratitude. "3 times a day," Elena said. "Wah. Tea. That's what he told me. Whatever prescription you need, take it 3 times a day. Morning, noon, and night." She squeezed his hand. "I think you're my prescription, Marcus Wheeler, and I intend to follow doctor's orders." The next morning, Marcus woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Sophie chattering happily in the kitchen. He lay in bed for a moment, listening to Elena's patient responses, to his dog's tail thumping against the floor, to the symphony of a house that was no longer empty. He thought of Catherine, of the life they'd shared and the dreams they'd built on this land. He knew she would have wanted this for him, would have been the first to push him toward happiness. When he walked into the kitchen, Sophie rushed to greet him with a hug, and Elena handed him a cup of coffee, her fingers brushing against his in a gesture that felt like a promise. "What are we doing today?" Sophie asked, bouncing with energy. Marcus looked at Elena, saw the future reflected in her eyes, and smiled. "Today," he said, "we're going to live." The prescription worked better than any medicine ever could. 3 times a day, Marcus found reasons to seek out Elena's company. Morning coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Lunch in the shade of the old oak tree, Sophie spinning stories about imaginary adventures. Evening conversations by the fire, 2 hearts learning to beat in rhythm. 6 months later, Marcus drove into town and bought a ring. Dr. Patterson was the first person he told. "I told you," the old doctor said, grinning broadly. "Best prescription I ever wrote. And I expect an invitation to the wedding." On a golden autumn afternoon, Marcus Wheeler married Elena Summers on the front porch of his farmhouse, with Sophie serving as flower girl and Sage lying contentedly at their feet. The mountains stood as witnesses, and somewhere, Marcus was certain, Catherine was smiling. The lonely rancher had found his cure, and she was everything he needed, 3 times a day and all the moments in between.